The day the Wilson family came to take back their biological daughter, Mrs. Elena said in front of everyone. "Don't worry. I'll be a better mother than you, her adoptive one, ever were." I didn't say anything. I signed the papers and let go. After that, my daughter Aria called me once a week, her tone 10 times sweeter than before. "Mom, the Wilsons hired a nutritionist for me. I've gained several pounds. But the collarbones in her video call looked even sharper than when she left. Mom, Blake took me to the amusement park. I had so much fun. But there was a band-aid over her right eyebrow. She said she bumped into the carousel. Mom, they transferred me to a private school. All my classmates are really nice to me. But when I looked up the school, there was no enrollment record for her at all. The last time we spoke, she said the Wilsons were taking her abroad to study, so it might not be convenient to stay in touch." Right before hanging up, she suddenly lowered her voice and said quickly, "Mom, there's a diary in the second drawer of my closet. I found the notebook that same night. Inside was a photo of the Wilson family's son. On the back, in Aria's handwriting, were 4 words. He's not human. Who is he? What inhuman thing did he do?" I stared at those words in the diary, "He's not human." My fingers wouldn't stop trembling. My fingertips pressed so hard they nearly tore through the thin photo. "Mom, what's wrong? Why aren't you sleeping?" My son Adrian rubbed his sleepy eyes and pushed open my bedroom door. "Adrian, go get dressed." I snapped the diary shut, my voice hoarse like I'd swallowed sand. "Where are we going this late?" Adrian looked at me, confused. "New York." I stood up and grabbed my jacket from the couch. "To find your sister." Adrian froze for a moment, then panic flashed in his eyes. "Did something happen to Aria?" He didn't ask another question. He just turned and went to grab his backpack. The 3 a.m. flight. The entire cabin was so quiet it made me anxious. I stared out at the pitch-black sky. All I could think about was Aria's trembling voice at the end of our last call. "Mom, I miss you so much." That was the only time she hadn't forced a smile since the Wilsons took her away. The plane landed in New York just as dawn broke. I pulled out my phone and sent Aria a message. "I have some work that suddenly brought me to New York. Mind if I stop by to see you?" My heart was in my throat. A full half-hour passed before she replied with a single line. "Oh Mom, bad timing. My parents took me on vacation. We're not in New York right now." I looked at those words, my hands and feet going ice cold. She didn't even send an emoji. That wasn't like Aria at all. "Mom, what did Aria say?" Adrian leaned over to look at the screen, his brow instantly furrowing. "She says she's not in New York." I pocketed my phone and strode toward the exit, dragging my suitcase. "So where are we going now?" "To the Wilson estate." The Wilsons lived in New York's most exclusive neighborhood. Their standalone villa halfway up the hill had its gates shut tight. The security was intense. They wouldn't let outsiders in. Adrian and I stored our luggage at a convenience store at the bottom of the hill and changed into plain workout clothes. Following the landscaped perimeter of the estate, we circled around to the back wall of the Wilson property. There was a bamboo grove here that didn't get much foot traffic. I crouched in the grass, eyes fixed on the closed wrought iron back gate. "Mom, is Aria really in there?" Adrian kept his voice low, his fists already clenched tight enough to crack. "Wait here. I'll go ask around." I spotted a middle-aged woman in a cleaning uniform walking past with a bag of trash. I immediately approached her. "Excuse me, did the Wilsons go on vacation today?" The cleaner looked startled and sized me up. "Vacation? No, the whole family's inside." My heart dropped. Aria had lied. Or someone had been lying with her phone. I bet the Wilsons are thrilled to have found their biological daughter. They must spoil her rotten, right? I forced a smile, trying to sound casual. The cleaner looked around, then curled her lip. "Spoil her? That house is a living hell." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" I pulled $200 from my pocket and discreetly slipped it into the cleaner's glove. Her eyes lit up and her voice dropped even lower. "You don't know, that son of theirs, Blake, he's got something wrong with his head. He used to enjoy torturing small animals. When he got bored of that, he started torturing people. Several housekeepers have been beaten so badly they quit." I dug my nails into my palm, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What about their biological daughter?" The cleaner sighed and shook her head. "They say they brought her back to live the good life, but really she's just a toy for that psycho. Just yesterday I heard her screaming in the yard. They said she fell down the stairs. Mrs. Elena even yelled at her for not watching where she was going and ruining the new carpet." My head erupted with a deafening buzz, like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my skull. My baby, the one I'd raised for 18 years, the one I couldn't even bring myself to yell at, in their house, she become a plaything for a lunatic? I'm gonna go in there and kill them. Adrian had crept up beside me, his eyes bloodshot, already lifting his leg to kick down the door. "Get back here." I grabbed him around the waist and dragged him into the bamboo grove. "Mom. Let me go. They're hurting Aria." Adrian struggled violently, tears streaming down his face. Just then, a piercing siren wailed closer and closer. Not a police car, an ambulance. The ambulance screeched to a stop at the Wilson Estate's front gate. I shoved Adrian aside and looked over. The gate was violently pushed open from inside. Blake walked out in expensive designer pajamas, cursing under his breath. Hurry up. Don't let her die in the house, it's bad luck. So disgusting. All that blood. Makes me sick. He walked while shaking water droplets off his hands in disgust. Those droplets had an unmistakable tint of red. Right behind him, Mrs. Elena followed in high heels, clicking rapidly. Her hair wasn't even mussed. Her makeup was flawless. Blake, watch your step. Don't let that filth touch you. She pulled out a handkerchief, looking at him with nothing but sympathy, and wiped his hands. It's all that damn girl's fault. Couldn't even cooperate with a simple game. Ruined everything. Blake kicked the doorframe. It's okay, sweetie. I'll buy you that new sports car. Don't be upset. Mrs. Elena coaxed him gently, her tone dripping with indulgence. 2 paramedics rushed out pushing a gurney. The person on it was covered by a white sheet already soaked halfway through with blood. A lifeless hand dangled off the side of the gurney, so thin it looked like it would snap in the wind. Around the wrist was a deep ligature mark. In that moment, I felt my breathing stop. That was my Aria. The Aria I'd raised from a tiny baby with my own hands. I'd thought being reunited with her biological parents would be a blessing. Move. The patient has lost too much blood and needs a transfusion immediately. The ER doctor, drenched in sweat, shouted at Blake, who was blocking the path. Are you blind? How dare you talk to my son like that? Mrs. Elena's eyes flashed. She pointed right at the doctor's nose and started screaming. Do you know who we are? One phone call and I'll make sure you never work in New York again. The doctor's face went pale with rage, but a life was on the line. He could only grit his teeth and bear it. Family needs to come with us. We need signatures. The nurse pushed the gurney into the ambulance and urged them anxiously. I'm not going to that depressing place. Blake took a step back, his face full of revulsion. Mrs. Elena frowned and covered her nose. Why would we go? Blake's been traumatized. He needs rest. Just take her. I'll pay double the medical bills. Are you even human? That's your biological daughter in there. The nurse finally couldn't take it anymore. Her eyes red, she shouted. Smack. The sharp sound of a slap rang out in the quiet morning. The nurse clutched her face, staring at Mrs. Elena in disbelief. Who do you think you are to lecture me? I gave birth to her. Her life belongs to me. Whatever I tell her to do, she does. Mrs. Elena shook out her hand, sneering. Get lost. Stop blocking my view. I'll go to the hospital myself later. The ambulance doors slammed shut and it roared away. I hid in the bamboo grove, shaking like a leaf. My teeth bit into my lip until it bled, the taste of rust spreading through my mouth. I clamped my hand over Adrian's mouth. He was already crying so hard his whole body convulsed, like an injured animal desperate to break free. Don't move. Going out there now won't change anything. I pressed my mouth to Adrian's ear, my voice shaking but carrying an undeniable ferocity. They have money and power. You can't beat them, and you'll just get yourself destroyed. Adrian looked at me in despair, tears falling in fat drops onto my hand. The Wilsons turned and went back into the villa. The gate slammed shut with a bang. I let go and pulled Adrian to his feet, running down the hill. To the hospital. We flagged down an Uber and headed straight for New York Central Hospital. In the car, the driver kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror. Going to the ER this early in the morning? I forced down the churning in my gut and nodded. Did you see that ambulance just now? The driver sighed and jerked the wheel. I saw it. What a tragedy. That came from the Hillside Estates, right? You know about it? I asked tentatively. The driver snorted. Anyone who drives Uber in New York knows about that bastard from the Wilson family. That Blake kid is a born psychopath. I heard when he was little he liked torturing animals. As he got older, it only got worse. Too bad they're rich. They can throw money at any mess he makes and it all goes away. I gripped the hem of my jacket. No one does anything. Do anything? Alexander only cares about money, and Mrs. Elena only has one son. She loves him like he's the center of the universe. The driver lowered his voice. I heard from a driver who worked for them, the Wilsons recently found their biological daughter. They call her their daughter, but really they just brought her back to be that psycho's punching bag. After all, beating outsiders causes trouble if it gets out. But your own family? Even if you beat them to death, who's gonna say anything? My heart felt like it was being fed through a meat grinder, crushed over and over. My Aria, that sweet angel who felt sorry for stray cats. In that house of horrors, she'd been treated like a toy for an animal. Mom. Adrian grabbed my hand. His hand was freezing. I'm going to kill him. I squeezed Adrian's hand back, staring at the hospital building ahead. You don't have to. I'll send them to hell myself. The light outside the ER was blindingly bright. Adrian and I sat on a bench around the corner of the hallway, wearing masks. Less than 30 feet away, I watched Alexander arrive in a hurry. He wore a sharp suit with a perfectly knotted tie. He didn't look like a father called in the middle of the night for his daughter's emergency. He looked like he was heading to an important business meeting. What happened? How did she end up in the hospital? The moment Alexander saw Mrs. Elena, his brow furrowed deep enough to crush a fly. There's a major acquisition this morning. Don't you know we can't have any negative press right now? He didn't ask if Aria was dead or alive. His first concern was his stocks. Mrs. Elena rolled her eyes and shot back defensively. Why are you yelling at me? Blake had a little too much to drink last night and got a bit rough, that's all. Aria's usually pretty tough. Who knew she'd be so fragile today? One bump into the coffee table and her head split open. Her breezy tone made it sound like she was talking about a broken vase. My nails dug deep into my flesh, my palms sticky with blood. Aria's a curse. We never should have brought her back after abandoning her. Alexander irritably loosened his tie. Should have just let her rot with that poor excuse for an adoptive mother. This is all for Blake, isn't it? Mrs. Elena lowered her voice, but it carried right to my ears. Better to have a sister at home for him to take his anger out on than have him kill someone on the outside. I shot to my feet, the last thread of rationality in my mind snapping with an audible crack. Adrian wanted to rush over and tear those inhuman mouths right off their faces. I grabbed Adrian's arm and shoved him back down into his seat. Patience. Don't ruin the plan. Adrian sobbed. I clenched my fist, nails digging into flesh, suppressing my own urge to charge forward. I had to save Aria. And I had to make them pay a price worse than death. The ER door opened. A doctor walked out, exhaustion written all over his face. Who's the family for Aria? Alexander walked over impatiently. I am. She's not going to die, is she? The doctor froze, a flash of anger in his eyes. The patient has multiple soft tissue contusions, a mild concussion, and most seriously, a fractured ulna in her right arm that requires immediate surgery with pins. And... The doctor paused, his tone turning severe. Alexander let out a cold laugh. He pulled a check from his pocket and stuffed it directly into the doctor's white coat. Dr. James, don't say things you shouldn't. Be careful what comes out of your mouth. The doctor's expression changed several times. Finally, he let out a deep sigh and didn't return the check. Go pay for the surgery. The doctor dropped the words coldly and turned back into the ER. Alexander turned to Mrs. Elena. Go pay the fees, then have Tom take her to the old villa in the suburbs. Having her at home is an eyesore. Don't let Blake see her and get upset. Mrs. Elena pursed her lips. I know. You better get to the office. This place is filthy. Alexander left without looking back. Mrs. Elena glanced disdainfully at the line at the payment counter and walked toward the VIP lounge. The hallway was left with only a few scattered family members of other patients. This was my only chance. I pulled Adrian up and walked quickly toward an empty patient room. Inside were isolation gowns and masks the nurses had changed out of. I quickly pulled one on and pressed a nurse's cap down low. Adrian, go downstairs and call a car. Park it in the alley behind the ER back door. Keep the engine running and wait for me in the car. Adrian looked at me with worry. Mom, can you do this? Let me go in with you. You're too conspicuous. I pushed him away. Remember, no matter what happens, protect Aria. I took a deep breath, picked up a stainless steel tray from the hallway cart, and walked toward the ER observation room with my head down. The door was slightly ajar. The moment I pushed it open, my tears fell uncontrollably. Don't come near me. Please don't. The person on the bed shrank into the corner. She held her head in her hands like a cat traumatized beyond reason, shaking like a leaf. Her once beautiful long hair had been hacked off unevenly, and there were even a few bald patches on her scalp. The face I'd kissed 1,000 times was now swollen, with dried purple-black blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. The oversized hospital gown couldn't hide the purple and blue whip marks covering her entire body. Her right arm hung limply, secured in a temporary splint. This was the Aria the Wilsons said they'd hired a nutritionist for, the one who'd gained several pounds. Aria. I threw down the tray, ripped off my mask, and rushed to the bed. Her body went rigid. She looked at me timidly through her fingers. In that moment, I clearly saw the disbelief and extreme fear in her eyes. Mom. Her lips trembled as she let out a sound as faint as a mosquito. Mom. Why did you come? You need to leave. They'll kill you. She suddenly pushed at me frantically, though she had no strength at all. Tears mixed with blood streaked down her face. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'm taking you home. I pulled her tightly into my arms, feeling her skeletal body trembling violently. My heart was torn into pieces. No, we can't leave. Aria clutched desperately at my clothes, her eyes fixed on the door in terror. Blake will get angry. If he finds out you came, he'll kill you. He'll kill Adrian. He's insane. He's really insane. She sobbed incoherently, clearly suffering from severe psychological trauma. Listen to me, Aria. I cupped her face and looked directly into her frightened eyes. Adrian's waiting for us downstairs. That animal Blake, I'll deal with him myself. Right now, we're leaving. Understand? I didn't dare delay. I threw back the covers. Around her ankles were raw, chafed marks from iron shackles. Animals. Worse than animals. I gritted my teeth and lifted her onto my back. She was as light as paper. My tears flooded out again. I wrapped her tightly in an oversized white coat and put a mask on her. Head down, I walked quickly out of the observation room. Mrs. Elena was still in the VIP lounge making an appointment for a manicure. The nurses in the hallway were busy resuscitating another patient. No one noticed me carrying a patient toward the fire escape. The stairwell was long. I carried her down step by step. My knees ached from the weight, but I felt nothing. All I felt was the warmth on my back, Aria's silent tears. I pushed open the ground floor safety door. A blast of cold morning air hit us. Adrian Zuber was parked 30 feet away, doors wide open. Aria. Adrian rushed over and took Aria from my back. The moment he saw her condition, he dropped to his knees and wailed. Aria. How could they do this to you? Adrian, don't cry. Aria weakly lifted her uninjured left hand and touched Adrian's head. Get in the car. I shoved them both into the back seat. To the train station. Fast as you can. I threw a stack of cash at the driver. Without a word, he floored it. After a few blocks, I confirmed we weren't being followed. I let out a long breath and turned to the back seat. Adrian, I booked the next train out. Take Aria to Houston in the south. I had an old friend rent us a place there. I've also contacted a discreet private clinic. You don't need to worry about anything. Just take care of Aria. Adrian's head snapped up, staring hard at me. What about you? I'm not leaving. I looked out at the passing streetscape, my voice cold as a knife dipped in ice. They tortured Aria like this and think no one will touch them? Mom, don't do anything stupid. Aria struggled to sit up, panic written all over her face. The Wilsons have connections everywhere. You can't fight them. Can't we just go to the police? The police? I turned around and looked at Aria's scarred face, letting out a cold laugh. The police would be letting them off too easy. What I wanted was their ruin. Their family destroyed. To see them on their knees, begging like dogs for my forgiveness. Adrian, take Aria and go. I opened the car door, preparing to get out at the red light. But. No buts. I cut him off sharply, my gaze fierce. If you think of me as your mother, take Aria as far away as you can. The car door shut. I stood in the cold morning wind and watched the Uber disappear around the corner. The game was officially beginning. I was going to make the Wilson family suffer, starting today. Just wait, Mrs. Elena, I murmured. I told you, if you couldn't be a good mother to Aria, then let me, her adoptive mother, do it. To destroy a family like the Wilsons, you cannot simply strike them. They have money, legal teams, and police chiefs on their speed dial. If I walked up to their gate with a knife, would be shot by their security, and Aria would spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for Blake to find her. Again. No. For people who live on a pedestal of gold and lies, the only true death is to have that pedestal shattered beneath them, exposing the rot to the very world they crave approval from. I rented a damp, windowless basement apartment in Queens under a false name, paying cash to a landlord who didn't ask questions. On the damp drywall, I taped up photographs, financial reports, and a detailed calendar of the Wilsons' upcoming days. Alexander Wilson's crown jewel was the impending merger between Wilson Global and the Swiss conglomerate, Vacheron Holdings. It was a multi-billion-dollar acquisition that would elevate Alexander to the international stage. The morality clause in the contract was notoriously strict. Vacheron Holdings was a multi-generational, conservative family business that prized its public image above all else. One whiff of scandal, one stain of blood on the Wilson name, and the deal would dissolve, leaving Alexander with billions in leveraged debt he could never repay. But I needed inside access. 2 days after Aria's rescue, I met Marta, the cleaner, at a diner far from the Hillside Estates. She looked nervous, her eyes darting to the door every time the bell chimed. I slid a thick envelope across the greasy table. Inside was $5,000, nearly all of my remaining savings. I don't want you to steal anything, Marta, I said, my voice low and steady. I just need you to look. Marta swallowed hard, her hand resting on the envelope. What do you want to know? Did they realize Aria is gone? Marta nodded rapidly, leaning in. They did. But Mrs. Elena is terrified of her. Husband finding out before the merger. She told Mr. Alexander that she sent Aria to the suburban villa early because the girl was depressed and acting out. She even hired a private investigator to find Aria quietly, but they're looking in New York. They have no idea she's in Houston. A cold smile touched my lips. And Blake? He's getting worse, Marta whispered, a shudder running through her frame. Since she left, he has nothing to vent his anger on. He's been locked in his room, smashing furniture. Yesterday, he threw a heavy glass vase at one of the kitchen staff. Mrs. Elena paid her off with $10,000 to keep her quiet. He's like a rabid dog, ma'am. He's unraveling. Good, I murmured. I want you to do one more thing for me. When you clean Blake's room tomorrow, I want you to drop this under his bed. I slid a small, black device across the table. It was a high-sensitivity, voice-activated microtransmitter, paired with a small, flat speaker no larger than a coin. Marta looked at the device, her face pale. If they find out. They won't, I assured her, locking my eyes with hers. And if you help me, I will make sure you never have to clean up after that monster again. She looked at the money, then at the device. Finally, her fingers closed around it. He deserves to rot, she spat. The things I've had to scrub out of his carpet, he's a demon. The psychological war began on a Tuesday. With the transmitter active, I could hear everything in Blake's room. I sat in my dark basement apartment, headphones pressed to my ears, listening to the erratic pacing of his heavy steps, the sudden, violent outbursts, and the desperate, coddling voice of Elena trying to soothe him. Sweetheart, please, Elena's voice drifted through the static. Your father's merger is in 4 days. Just stay inside. I'll get you whatever you want. A new car, a watch, just don't go out. I want the girl. Blake roared, the sound followed by the crash of shattered porcelain. She ran away. She took my things. I wasn't finished with her. We'll find her, Blake. I promise you, we'll find her. But you must be patient. They wouldn't find her. I had already moved Aria and Adrian to a secure, private clinic in a remote part of Texas, funded by an anonymous donation from a charity I had spent years working with. Aria was safe, undergoing reconstructive surgery on her arm and beginning the long, painful process of psychological trauma therapy. But Blake's torment was just beginning. That night, using the dual-channel transmitter, I activated the microspeaker hidden behind his headboard. I had spent hours editing old audio files. I took clips of Aria's voice from her childhood, back when she laughed, back when her voice was sweet and light, and layered them over a faint, weeping track. At 3:15 a.m., the exact time Blake used to drag her down to the basement, the speaker breathed a tiny, barely audible whisper into the dark room. Mom. It hurts, why won't they stop? In the receiver, I heard Blake's breathing instantly stop. The bed creaked. Who's there? His voice was sharp, laced with a sudden, ugly panic. He threw off the covers. He stomped around the room, flicking on the lights. I could hear him tearing his closet open, panting like a cornered animal. Finding nothing, he muttered curse words under his breath, turning off the lights and returning to bed. An hour later, I played another clip. This time, it was the sound of a metal chain dragging slowly across a hardwood floor, a sound Aria knew all too well. But now, it was Blake's turn to hear it. Blake. The whisper was faint, distorted. I'm under the floorboards. Shut up. Shut up. Blake screamed, throwing a heavy object against the wall. Within seconds, Elena's frantic footsteps hurried down the hall. She burst into his room. Blake. What is it? What's wrong? She's in the walls. The bitch is in the walls. I hear her. Blake was hyperventilating, his voice cracking with a manic, unhinged terror. There's no one here, baby, look at me, Elena cried, her voice trembling. It's just a nightmare. You're stressed. No. She's here. She's mocking me. I sat in the dark queen's basement, the cold plastic of the headphones pressed against my ears, listening to the monster weep with terror. He was a sadist, and like all sadists, his cruelty was built on absolute power. The moment that power was stripped away, the moment he felt helpless in the face of something he couldn't control, he reverted to a pathetic, shivering child. The next day, I had Marta place a single, folded piece of paper on his desk while he was downstairs eating breakfast. On the paper, written in perfect imitation of Aria's elegant handwriting, were the words, "He's not human. And now, everyone will know." When Blake found the note, the audio feed erupted into absolute chaos. He tore his room apart. He accused the housekeepers, he screamed at his mother, and finally, he struck Elena. I heard the sharp, sickening sound of a slap, followed by Elena's choked gasp of shock. Blake. Elena whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and profound heartbreak. You hit me? You're hiding her. Blake shrieked. You let her back in. You're trying to make me look crazy. For the first time, Elena did not coddle him. She backed away, her high heels clicking rapidly out of the room, leaving her son alone with his demons. The crack in their armor had finally formed. While Blake was unraveling, I turned my attention to Alexander. Alexander Wilson was a man of cold, hard logic. He did not care about his son's mental illness, nor did he care about his wife's tears. He cared about the Vacheron Holdings merger. On Thursday morning, 2 days before the signing ceremony, Alexander received an email from an encrypted, untraceable address. The subject line read, "The true cost of Wilson Global." Attached to the email were 30 high-resolution photographs. They were not photos of corporate assets or financial spreadsheets. They were photos of Aria's medical records from New York Central Hospital, the fractured ulna, the raw skin, where the iron shackles had chewed into her ankles, the deep, purple whip marks across her back. Along with the photos was a copy of the $50,000 hush money check Alexander had stuffed into Dr. James's pocket, paired with a hidden audio recording of their brief conversation in the hallway. The text of the email was brief. The Swiss value morality, Mr. Wilson. I wonder what Vacheron Holdings will think when these photos are projected onto the screens at the signing gala on Saturday night. If you want the files destroyed, bring $5 million in unmarked bills to the abandoned warehouse at Pier 42 tonight at midnight. Come alone. If I see a single police officer, or if you bring your private security, the media gets the files instantly. From the tapping of Alexander's office phone, which I had easily accomplished by posing as a telecom technician and deploying a simple copper tap on the junction box near his office building, I heard him immediately call his personal security chief. Get the money, Alexander commanded, his voice tight, stripped of all its usual corporate arrogance. And get a cleanup team. When this blackmailer shows up, I don't want them leaving that pier. Do you understand me? Yes, Mr. Wilson. We'll handle it quietly. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Of course he would try to kill the blackmailer. A man like Alexander doesn't pay, he eliminates. But I had no intention of going to Pier 42. Instead, I used Alexander's distraction to make my next move. At 11:30 p.m., while Alexander and his security team were waiting in the freezing wind of Pier 42, I drove a rented van up to the gates of the Wilson estate. Marta had left the back gate unlocked as we had planned. I slipped through the dark bamboo grove, carrying a heavy duffel bag. The house was quiet. Elena was locked in her room, sedated by the pills she took to cope with her son's escalating violence. Blake was in his room, pacing, muttering to himself, his mind completely broken by days of psychological torture. I didn't go to Blake's room. I went to Alexander's private study. Using a simple USB injection tool, I bypassed his desktop security and downloaded every personal file, financial ledger, and email thread onto a portable drive. But I didn't stop there. I opened his physical safe, the combination of which I had watched him press through a hidden camera Marta had planted in the ceiling light weeks ago. Inside the safe were stacks of cash, offshore account details, and a small velvet box containing the heirloom jewelry of the Wilson family. I ignored the jewelry. Instead, I took a small, leather-bound ledger. It contained the names of the judges, police captains, and city officials Alexander had bribed over the last decade to keep his son's accidents from ever reaching a courtroom. It was the Holy Grail. The complete map of the Wilson corruption. As I slipped the ledger into my bag, a floorboard creaked behind me. I froze. Who are you? I turned slowly. Standing in the doorway of the study was Blake. He looked terrible. His hair was greasy and matted, his expensive silk pajamas torn at the sleeves. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and completely devoid of sanity. In his right hand, he held a heavy, silver letter opener. You, he whispered, a twisted, horrible realization dawning on his face. You're the mother. The trash she came from. Hello, Blake, I said, my voice dropping to a cold, flat register. I didn't back down. I didn't show fear. I stood my ground, staring directly into the eyes of the boy who had tortured my daughter. Where is she? He snarled, stepping into the room, his fingers tightening around the silver blade. She's mine. I wasn't done with her. Tell me where she is, or I'll cut you open first. She's far away from you, I said softly. In a place where you can never touch her again. You're a coward, Blake. You only hurt those who can't fight back. But look at you now. You're trembling. I'll kill you. He screamed, lunging forward with the blade raised. I didn't flinch. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small, heavy canisters of military-grade bear pepper spray. Before he could reach me, I depressed the nozzle. A thick, orange fog of concentrated capsaicin blasted directly into his face. Blake let out a high-pitched, agonizing shriek. The letter opener clattered to the floor as he collapsed onto his knees, clawing frantically at his eyes. The chemical was so potent it immediately blistered his skin, his throat closing up. As he gasped for air, vomiting onto the expensive Persian rug. I stepped around him, looking down at his pathetic, writhing form. That was for Aria, I whispered. I picked up my duffel bag and walked out of the study, locking the heavy oak door from the outside, leaving him screaming in the dark. Saturday night. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. The room was a sea of glittering diamonds, black tuxedos, and champagne flutes. The banners of Wilson Global and Vacheron Holdings hung side by side above the main stage, where a massive projection screen was set up to broadcast the live signing of the merger. Alexander Wilson stood near the stage, looking radiant, though the slight puffiness under his eyes betrayed his lack of sleep. His Pier 42 trap had failed. His security team had found nothing but an empty pier and a mocking printed note that read, "Too slow, Alex." Elena stood beside him, her face caked in thick makeup to hide the bruises Blake had left on her cheek. She forced a stiff, plastic smile for the photographers, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold her glass. I sat in the back of the ballroom, dressed in a simple, elegant black dress I had bought from a consignment shop. A silk scarf covered my neck, and a pair of dark-rimmed glasses softened my features. To the security staff, I was just another anonymous freelance event coordinator. At exactly 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. The CEO of Vacheron Holdings, an elderly Swiss gentleman with a stern, aristocratic face, took the microphone. Tonight, we bring together two great institutions, the CEO began, his voice echoing through the ballroom. A partnership built on shared values, integrity, and trust. Alexander stepped up to the podium, beaming. He adjusted his microphone. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. This merger is not just about profit, it is about legacy. It is about showing the world what a family-built business can achieve when it operates with the highest standards of. Before he could finish the word integrity, the massive projection screen behind him flickered. The promotional video of Wilson Global skyscrapers suddenly vanished, replaced by a stark, high-definition video feed. The ballroom fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. On the screen was the interior of a dimly lit bedroom. Blake Wilson was sitting on the floor, his face red and swollen, his eyes crazed. He was rocking back and forth, clutching a blood-stained whip. They think they can hide her from me. Blake's voice boomed through the ballroom state-of-the-art sound system. But she's my toy. My parents bought her for me. Mom said I could do whatever I wanted to her as long as I didn't do it on the street. She said Aria was born to be my punching bag. What is this? Turn it off. Alexander roared, turning to the tech booth, his face instantly draining of all color. Turn it off right now. But the tech booth had been locked from the inside, the control console overridden by the virus I had uploaded to Alexander's office computer 2 nights ago. The video cut to a series of photographs, the same photographs I had sent to Alexander, but now they were displayed in giant, horrifying detail for all 500 guests to see. The broken bones, the deep lacerations, the iron shackles on Aria's ankles. And then, a document appeared on the screen. It was the complete digital copy of Alexander's bribery ledger, listing the names of the high-ranking officials who had covered up Blake's past crimes, complete with the bank routing numbers and exact dollar amounts. The guests gasped. Several women covered their mouths, turning away in horror. The Swiss CEO's face went from pale to a deep, furious red. He stepped away from Alexander as if the man were radioactive. Alexander, Jean-Pierre whispered, his voice trembling with disgust. What? What is the meaning of this? It's a lie. It's a deep fake. A corporate attack. Alexander screamed, his voice cracking, sweat pouring down his face, ruining his expensive suit. He grabbed the Swiss CEO's arm. Jean-Pierre, please, let me explain. Do not touch me, the old man hissed, wrenching his arm away. He turned to his associates. The merger is off. Call our legal team. We are withdrawing. Immediately. No. No. You can't. Alexander cried, his knees literally buckling as the Realization of his financial ruin hit him. Without this merger, his leveraged loans would default by Monday morning. He was bankrupt. He was ruined. Just then, the grand doors of the ballroom were pushed open. A dozen federal agents and NYPD officers strode down the center aisle, their badges gleaming under the chandeliers. Alexander Wilson? Elena Wilson, the lead agent called out, his voice cutting through the panic. You are under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, obstruction of justice, and child endangerment. Elena let out a piercing, hysterical shriek, dropping her champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the golden liquid mixing with her tears as she fell to her knees. No. Not me. It was Blake. It was all Blake. I was just protecting my son. Your son is already in custody, ma'am, the officer said coldly, pulling her hands behind her back and clicking the steel handcuffs into place. He confessed to everything 20 minutes ago. I watched from the shadows of the back row as the great, powerful Wilson family was dragged out of the Plaza Hotel in handcuffs, surrounded by a feeding frenzy of flashing press cameras. The wealth, the power, the arrogance, all of it dissolved in a single, glorious hour. As Elena was led past the back row, her eyes wild with panic, she suddenly caught sight of me. I didn't hide. I took off my glasses, letting her see my face clearly. She froze, her lips parting in horror. She recognized me. She recognized the poor, pathetic adoptive mother she had sneered at only weeks ago. I didn't say a word. I simply raised my hand and gave her a gentle, polite wave. You. Elena screamed, struggling against the officer's grip. It was you. You ruined us. You filthy, pathetic. The officer shoved her forward, cutting off her screeching as the heavy oak doors shut behind them. 2 weeks later, the Texas sun was warm and gentle. I sat on the porch of a small, quiet ranch house outside of Houston. The air smelled of dry grass and pine. The door opened, and Adrian walked out carrying 2 mugs of hot tea. He sat down beside me, his shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. The doctor says she can come home next week, Mom, Adrian said, a soft, genuine smile warming his face. Her arm is healing perfectly. The physical therapist says she'll have full mobility in a few months. And her mind? I asked, squeezing his hand. She laughed today, Adrian whispered, his eyes shining with a few happy tears. A real, loud laugh. She was watching the birds outside her window. She told me. She wants to go back to school. She wants to study art. My heart, which had been a block of ice for so long, finally began to melt. Just then, the phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a news alert. Wilson Global declares bankruptcy. Alexander Wilson sentenced to 15 years for bribery and fraud. Elena Wilson sentenced to 8 years for co-conspiracy. Blake Wilson deemed mentally unfit for trial, committed to maximum security psychiatric facility indefinitely. I closed the article and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The Wilsons were gone. Their names would rot in the archives of New York's criminal history. They would never hurt another soul, and they would certainly never touch my daughter again. Mom? I looked up. Aria was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a simple, oversized yellow sundress. Her hair was still short, but it had been styled into a cute, neat bob. Her skin had regained its healthy golden glow, and though her right arm was still in a light sling, her eyes were bright, clear, and free of the terror that had once consumed them. She walked over, her steps light, and sat on the empty space beside me. She leaned her head gently against my shoulder, her left hand finding mine and gripping it tight. I love you, Mom, she whispered, her voice 10 times sweeter than it had ever been on those forced video calls, because this time, it was real. I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close against my chest, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in brilliant shades of gold and violet. I love you too, my baby, I murmured, kissing the top of her head. You're home. Now. And nothing will ever take you away again.